Yes. Welcome to Fresh Off the Boat. I'm delighted to be chatting with Akriti Shah, a student I perhaps met, and I just realized we did meet maybe way back when you were applying in 2013-14 as a high school student at UWC Singapore. So, your journey has been interesting. Just having this chat before our call was that, you chose to do medicine and you chose to apply to the UK, and then finally you're at Imperial College pursuing a 6-year degree of medicine there.
Yeah.
Started out in 2016. So tell me a bit more about that decision. How did you finally sort of decide on Imperial?
So I knew I kind of wanted to do something biology related. Then I kind of fiddled between like biomed and medicine. And I talked to a lot of people, and I actually only made my mind up in the March of the application year, which was quite late. Because people have usually finished their job shadowing and everything by then. And I had about 5 months-ish to do the job shadowing, to do all of the BMAT and UKCAT. But I found in my job shadowing I really liked it. So I applied to the UK for medicine. And then, I ended up getting into Imperial after like different interviews. And before that, I'd actually gone for an open day at Imperial. And I remember really liking the campus because even though it's in London, it's not usually like the generic like city campus. You do have like more of like a country-ish campus life where you have everything centered around one area and you're not in kind of different parts of London, and I really like that. So yeah, I really like their culture. I talked to a few people in the year above doing medicine at Imperial, and they really recommended it, and so I just
Fantastic.
ended up picking it.
So how was it like settling in finally when you ended up going there for your first semester?
Not bad, actually. I talked to a few people who were going into Imperial that year too. So I did know a few people going in. And the culture there is really good. Like, you have a warden for each floor, and they're really welcoming. They have a lot of events and Freshers Week where you just get to meet a lot of new people. It did feel a bit weird, leaving home and like going that far away. But I really came to enjoy it, and I definitely settled in quite well.
So in terms of academics, we all know that, at least the perception is that med school is quite a pressure cooker. And
Yeah.
what is the reality going in with IB? And I'm sure you had good credits to make it to Imperial. But what is it like for an IB student to start college in the UK?
Um, in the UK, not bad actually. I feel like IB is quite like high pressure, especially near the end and during application time. Then, and the good thing about the UK would be, for my degree, at least I'm not sure about the remainder, we only have like one exam period at the end of the year. We don't have it like the US where you have a midterm, final. So if you manage your time well, then I know it might sound really cliche, but it's actually not bad at all. If you kind of keep on top of your work, but it can get quite, pressured being in the med school because you just have so much to remember, like taking into account like the different modules which you have to take, which might be more than like other kind of courses. So it can be quite difficult because you have patient interaction on top of that too, which you have to handle. Then near the end of the year, it can get quite, pressured.
That's interesting to know. Of course, when you look at the curriculum for the first year, second year, and then as you progress, how does it work? What are the courses that you were expected to cover in your first few years, and then how do you start specializing in areas of your interest or in general?
Yeah, in year one and two, you have you mainly do your main like biology modules. So you do like biochem, learn about all of your molecules and mechanisms behind that. You don't have much clinical work other than kind of 1 2 week attachment every year. But you do, the unique thing about Imperial would be that in the first week they actually make you look at a cadaver, and like it's quite like unique. A lot of like colleges don't do that, which can be quite interesting. And then after that you go into third year where you have your clinical year, whole year, where you're rotating between different specialties. And then in your fourth year, you have something called an intercalation year, where you do a BSc in any kind of degree you want. You can remain at Imperial if you want. You can go to another degree, another uni in the UK, and just kind of do whatever you want. So I picked to do my BSc in biomedical engineering just because I really wanted a break from anything medical related. And I'm like, it'll be your only opportunity in life to kind of get that. And I really enjoyed that. A lot of people like pick that fourth year to be their favorite year because you just kind of get a break from the clinical life and kind of get to know like what other things are out there. And then in your final 2 years, you go back into your clinical attachment. And then after that, it's a really long process. After university, then you have something called your internship year called F1 in the UK, where you have your foundation year one, and you could be put anywhere in the UK where you're pretty much a doctor, but you're a junior doctor and you undergo training. And after that, you build up and get more specialized.
Wow, it requires stamina for sure. Just
Yeah, a
listening
lot. And
to
yeah,
yeah, all the work that you have to put in. The intercalation year seems interesting because you can also do it at
yeah,
another school. So what are the typical choices students have made? You chose to remain at Imperial,
yeah.
but what are the typical
Um,
choices?
a few people have gone to kind of UCL because they just wanted,
Sure.
to do more humanities degree rather than like a medical-ish degree. And a few people have actually taken the option to do that BSc year and then take more time out of their medical degree to go on and do a PhD. So they've gone to like Oxbridge, and after they finish their PhD, they'll return back to Imperial and finish their medical degree. But the bulk of the people pick to remain at Imperial.
So during the time, this is more true with your clinical sort of practicum areas. What is a day in the life of a typical fourth year, fifth year, and sixth year student going to be who's focused on, say, the practical stuff?
Um, so okay, for fifth year, that'll be more like the clinical thing. Fifth year and final year, mainly clinical. So you have, depending on which rotation you get, like you change around for like 10 from 10 different things during the year. And usually every morning you'd wake up, go to whichever hospital you've been given, and typically it can be quite a long commute because like the Imperial hospitals are all around London. They're North London, East London, like everywhere. You'd go there, you'd follow your doctor around, and then you'd be given time to do your own thing, any teaching you might have arranged. You can go into surgery, and then go back to clinic. Then it can really vary. It'll depend on what kind of rotation you're on. So if you're on a GP rotation, you'd be in the GP clinic all day. But if you're in a pediatric rotation, then you could be watching surgery, you could be in clinic, you could be like doing your own thing. But we do have a few targets which we have to reach at the end of each rotation. And if you manage to reach that, then that's literally all you need.
Pretty much. So you grew up in Singapore, you're a Singaporean. How does it match, like the articulation between, say, the degree that you get in the UK, and if you were to practice and stay on in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
that's obviously an option. But what about moving back home? Is that an option too? And does it
Mm-hmm.
qualify you
Yeah.
enough to practice?
Yeah. So if you look at Singapore, then they're open to a few international universities where if you've gotten a medical degree from there, you can come back and be a doctor over here. And they've got a whole document online. And if your university fit that criteria, then it should be no problem. I'm not exactly sure what will happen if they don't fit that criteria, but I'm assuming you might have to take another like exam or something, but it's
And then
usually not hard to come back.
working in the UK, is that something
Yeah,
a possibility as well?
yeah. You usually, if you get a medical degree from the UK, you're usually guaranteed a job as a doctor in the UK after that.
That's
Yeah.
that's really good to know. Let's talk about other things that you do besides studying and going for clinical practice. What is, how do you find time to do other things, and what are the few things that you enjoy doing?
I feel like they've changed a lot during like each year. I feel like when you're in year one, you're just trying to get to know like as many people as you can. Then you join like a lot of like different societies. Like I joined the Indian one, the Hindu one, and a lot of people pick to join like a sport one because that's where like they find their main group. But I found mine in the Indian one. So you kind of get involved in that. And they have a lot of events which like you attend, and then you can kind of become like the leader of one event. Then I really enjoyed one of the events which I took part in, and then my third year I ended up choreographing like a fashion show for Imperial, like a charity fashion show. Then you do have a lot which you can do. But I feel like the older you get, like I've definitely found that that changed in fourth year where you don't really get involved a lot in that kind of stuff. And people mainly end up doing their own thing. So you, I don't know, just meet up with
Sure,
friends
that's
outside of
better.
that. Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to switch gears and ask you a few rapid fire questions. And the
Okay.
first one is more to do with what you've realized about yourself during this lockdown, slowdown,
Yeah.
quarantine, shelter in place. So, what is it, two or three things that you've discovered about yourself or areas of improvement that you want to work on?
That's a good question. Number one, that I need to, leave the house. Like before, I did think that, oh yeah, I'd be okay being at home for a good week without, leaving the house, but I definitely need to. I have realized that I've been doing a few like other things like online programs and everything, and I found that really helpful, which I didn't think I'd enjoy before. And I found that I don't know what more. Yeah, I guess
Sure.
that's it.
Super. So, my next question is about if you can think of a time when you were disappointed or there was a failure or an embarrassment. What was the
Uh,
learning from that situation?
um, I feel like the main kind of I wouldn't call it a failure, but like when you're put down would be during the application period where like you used to apply to a lot of universities and you think that you've put in all that effort and it won't like I'm sure that'll be for everyone, but they don't always, get what they expect to. And I found that like quite difficult because you think, yeah, you put in all that effort and IB, all that pressure. And it can be quite demotivating sometimes, but I don't know, I guess it could be like everything does like turn out for the better. Like I'm really happy with where I am right now, and I think that's what people applying should really keep in mind, that it will turn out for the better.
That's definitely good advice, and I think I'll continue with on that vein in terms of admissions and
Yeah.
the nitty gritty for
Yeah.
for a med school sort of applicant. So, what do you think are the steps? There's the BMAT, there's the UCAT. How do you really prepare? I mean, I keep telling my students that there's not much you can do to prepare. Of course, you can see some sample
Hmm.
papers, etc. But what is your advice when it comes to these tests? And second, what really goes into a med school interview? And in your experience, how prepared were you to sort
Hmm.
of face those interviews?
Okay, yeah. For the BMAT and UCAT, you can't really prep for the UCAT that much, and I actually found it much harder than the BMAT. For the BMAT, you can, and I think I had one prep book which I found really helpful, but I definitely don't think I over prep for it because you can't after a while. It's really unpredictable what can come up on a day, but definitely prep for the BMAT more if you are applying to a BMAT college. Um, for the interview can be a bit of a gamble depending on which college you go to. So, and like what they're looking for, because I actually took part in the interview panel for Imperial in my fourth year, and genuinely it can be really subjective. But I feel like in an interview, it's really number one, which is really important, would be that don't say anything which you're not 100% sure of. Like a lot of the candidates went like, yeah, I know Imperial are working on that. And you're like, no, they're not. You have to really show that you're passionate. You have to show that being a doctor is what you want. Because after you like get into medical school, there's not really any backing out or any like point of, dropping out. Like, you are in it for the long run. And I feel like people should be really sure that they want to do it. And it would be really important to show that you have a life outside of kind of your academic life. Like, we don't just want someone who's like working all the time, that might show like dedication, but they need to be all rounded, which would be a really important part of being a doctor. Like, you do need to be really all rounded and be able to manage your time well. And prepping for the interview, I talked to a lot of people going to each individual university and kind of asked them how their interview went, and like whether there's anything unique to that college. I can kind of only really talk about Imperial in general. Like, the unique thing about Imperial is that intercalation in fourth year, like they will expect you to mention that why you want to do that intercalation. And another question I got was that why are you not applying to their affiliate in Singapore? So Lee Kong Chien are affiliated with Imperial, and I didn't apply there. And they're like, you're from there, why are you not applying there? Then you kind of need to have a good reason, like Singaporean people, about why you don't want to go to the university over here. But yeah, that was pretty much it about the preparation.
Fantastic. I think it's just good to have this information. And I think our listeners,
Yeah,
we do have students who are inclined towards pursuing medicine, and it seems pretty daunting at first.
yeah,
So, any information that you shared will be pretty useful. So, when it comes to the statement of purpose, and especially for med school, do you
yeah.
think there is not a formula, but what worked for you? What do you think the narrative structure for an applicant to med school is desirable? Let's say.
So in your actual application, they don't care about any other extracurricular activity you've done. Like, if you've played like the piano, they don't care about that. They want to know why you want to be a doctor. They'll question you on that in the interview, but not in your application. So what I did, I only talked about each of the job shadowings which I had. So I did one GP, I did one private healthcare, public healthcare, and one surgical one. So they were all really different, and I talked about what I learned from each of them and why like that made me want to be a doctor. Um, and that was pretty much it. You only talk about your job shadowing in the application.
Fantastic. And in the interview, going back to the interview though, so there could be questions on biology, chemistry, other than why do you want to be
Yeah.
a doctor?
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot of universities have actually changed their interview format from being a 10-minute panel interview to a 1 hour multiple mini interviews. And in that they're actually much harder, where they have like where they can test you on kind of scientific knowledge.
Okay. Great. So thank you so much, Akriti. It was just fantastic just reconnecting and
No
getting to
problem.
know
Thank you.
how you're doing. So fantastic. There are a few webinars and panels we are
Yeah.
putting together, and one of them is about med school. But since you also did your intercalation in
Yeah.
biomed and technology, biotech, uh,
Biomedical engineering.
yeah, so yeah, that'll be
Yeah.
interesting to even sort of cover in those sessions. If time permits, I'm
Yeah.
gonna send out a schedule, and if
Yeah,
you're
sure.
around, happy to
Yeah.
have you on that.
That'll be
All
great.
right,
And people can reach out if they need any help.
thank you. It's been wonderful.
Thank you.